Story 1. I moved across the country for a man. I got married and I am now divorced. I do not like it here and I have no family nearby. Story 2. I swam in the Zambezi River while I was drunk on a tiger fishing trip. I still cannot believe I was that stupid. For those who do not know, it is infested with hippopotamuses and crocodiles, which are known for attacking and killing people. Story 3. I used to dive in ponds at golf courses to collect lost balls and clean and sort them to sell back to the courses. It's unbelievable how many snakes, alligators, and leeches live in those ponds. I made less than minimum wage, around $6 per hour at the time, and had countless close calls with critters. However, the most dangerous creatures on golf courses are old people. They do not give a fuck if you're working. They will absolutely send balls of hard plastic hurtling at your head at 50 miles per hour without a second thought, then get pissed when their ball hits your tank or cart and splits open, and demand you hand over some of your recovered balls in compensation. I have been informed that golf balls fly much faster than 50 miles per hour. Yes, the course was always informed when we were there, and they usually scheduled the appointments. We roped off the area with bright tape, cones, and signs, and the golfers were asked to steer clear of the area or the course shut down for a couple of hours. It depends on the course, though. Some people treat those rules as suggestions and ignore them, especially in places without barriers or fences around the course. This was in Florida, hence the density of dangerous wildlife. Story 4. My friends and I used to steal signs that read, "If you are caught stealing, you will be prosecuted." We committed many illegal acts and passed up hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of goods to take increasingly hard-to-find paper signs. Story 5. I told this story a while ago. My friends and I used to break into expensive-looking houses and use their showers. This was in the late 1990s when extravagant showers were in vogue, and we wanted to see if they were actually any good. For the most part, they were not. We never stole anything except water. We brought our own towels and toiletries. We were careful about who we targeted and made sure they had set schedules and no children or pets. The reward was a lousy shower and we risked jail time. Story 6. Jumping onto a bus that was pulling away from the stop before the doors closed. Buses arrive every 10 minutes. Story 7. I climbed a water tower while intoxicated to find a friend. It turned out he was not lost. He was yelling at me from the base of the tower. Story 8. I broke into an abandoned mental hospital on cocaine with a group of people I mostly did not even like in college. Technically, I got something out of it. A door number from one of the rooms. I promptly became terrified that it would somehow make me haunted because I was on cocaine, and I passed it to someone else at the first opportunity. Many people have guessed where this was. It was in the area of Marlboro, New Jersey. I do not remember the name of the place. I was not from the area and was tagging along with a local group. Story 9. Performed cardiopulmonary resuscitation on 2 patients with active tuberculosis. I felt awful afterward. Neither survived. Story 10. I told my mom my dad was working outside. Not that he was tearing out a wall because he thought a sliding door would be nice. He had not finished before she got home. Story 11. While building a house, the second floor had an I-beam that extended out into nowhere and needed to be painted with rust protection paint. The floor had not been installed and the joists were still going in. To save time, I shimmied out to the end of the beam and started painting. Every gust of wind made the whole thing sway, and my movements made it wobble. I nearly took a 6-meter swan dive to the concrete floor a dozen times. I could have painted it after the floor was in, but that would have meant laying down drop sheets and a lot of messing around. I should have waited. It was a stupid thing to do. Story 12. I was an unpaid intern at a flower shop. One day, a shady person was seen in the basement. Someone said he had stolen something from the shop and fled there. The shop was in an apartment building at street level, and the basement led to the rest of the building. They asked me, a 16-year-old girl, to go to the basement and check. I was young and naive, so I went. Thank God I found no one. Story 13. I decided to see how fast I could get on a nearby neighborhood road while driving my mother's car. I reached 80 miles per hour in about 6 seconds. By the time I realized I should slow down, The tires were screeching as I tried to stay on the road. It was a mostly straight neighborhood road with a 35 miles per hour speed limit that curved near the end and led to a four-way stop. I reached 80 miles per hour right where the road began to curve, and as I was turning I was going so fast that I drifted into the other lane, just a foot or two from mounting the curb. I slowed and brought the car to a stop at the intersection. My family member in the passenger seat looked at me as if he had just scared the life out of himself. I was 19 at the time and had just gotten my license that summer. My passenger was 16. I have never had such a powerful moment of instant regret. I did not feel cool at all. I could have killed a pedestrian, a child, or myself and my family member. That day, I truly learned that I could lose my life, and I have respected traffic laws since, to a reasonable extent. I am only glad that we came out completely unharmed. Story 14. I skipped class after a standardized test. That afternoon, teachers were showing movies and doing nothing, so I decided to serve in-school suspension and sit behind a warehouse to nap with my dumbass friend. Story 15. I spent a year in a program I wasn't interested in to try to win over a girl who turned me down instantly. I wasn't horny. I was lonely. We had been good friends before, but not so much afterward, as things became awkward. It was my second year, so I ended up with a social science degree I never used. Story 16. I was working as a chef in a gourmet bar and restaurant, and I had become somewhat of a teacher's pet as my manager's favorite employee because I was never late and covered shifts and so on. Not for his sake. I wanted more money. A new employee started and he was awful. He lasted only 2 weeks before almost being sacked, but I wanted to teach him the ways. One morning during preparation on Valentine's Day, our biggest revenue day, he carelessly left a cloth on an open flame and the fire ravaged about a quarter of the kitchen, including the stock, the microwaves, the cooker, and the vegetable preparation area. For some inexplicable reason I said it was my fault when the manager was furious, thinking the new employee would be saved and I would just take a severe telling off and everything would be fine eventually. No, I was sacked. He threw me out. To this day, I will never understand why I put my neck into that guillotine. Story 17. I stole the wheels off all the chairs in my high school computer lab as a joke during a 20-minute break. I still have one. I could have been expelled for a slightly funny prank and a useless chair wheel. Story 18. I balanced on the top rung of a 6-meter ladder to change a light bulb at work. Thanks for the upvotes. Story 19. I started smoking. Like, what the fuck is this? It has no benefits. It makes me uncomfortable whether I smoke or not. Fuck cigarettes. Edit. The response to this comment was unbelievable. Thank you, everyone. You gave me the courage to try to quit. Wish me luck. Many people recommended Alan Carr's Easy Way to Stop Smoking, which I am currently reading, and I must say it is amazing. Story 20. I drove well beyond the speed limit when I first learned to drive. Story 21. A lot of illegal graffiti. For about 3 years, it was all I cared about. I hung off ledges and bridges, climbed the sides of buildings, went on roofs, hid under trains, and visited dangerous places by myself at 3 a.m. Abandoned buildings, squatter houses, and rough neighborhoods. Not to mention the risk of criminal prosecution. Paint did not just fall into my lap. One year I spent $5,000 on spray paint, in addition to obtaining it by other means. A homeless man threatened me with a knife. A couple of gang members tried to rob me, and a freight train passed about a foot from me. Not all at the same time, but those were some of the worst moments. Update. I definitely got some thrills. The biggest was watching a train pass and seeing 4 or 5 of my pieces on it, or seeing something of mine in a newspaper. I attribute it to being fascinated by the art form and not normally feeling much because of the antidepressants I was taking at the time. The antidepressants helped with the anxiety and fear associated with criminal activity, too. I had to fight mental battles with myself to force myself to break into a train yard or paint a wall in front of cars on the highway. I have not done any illegal activities for a few years now. I have things to live for. It was a very strange time in my life, to say the least. Thank you for reading. Story 22. I used to sneak into my parents' room at night while they were sleeping to use the ensuite bathroom because it was more comfortable than the shared bathroom. It took ages. I would slowly open the door and creep across the room, all for a cozier bathroom visit. In hindsight, that was madness. When I eventually got caught, my dad screamed, "What the heck are you doing in here at this hour?" When I said it was to use that bathroom instead of the other one, he nearly lost his mind. Story 23. In third grade, I took a hearing test and pretended not to hear the beeps until the frequency reached about 5,000 hertz. No implants or anything, just mischievous behavior toward the nurse. Story 24. I licked raw chicken to prove not all chicken had salmonella. Story 25. I once went on a heater at the Luxor in Las Vegas. When it was over, I had turned $60 into $78,000 and change. I was drunk with excitement. It was 8 in the morning on Saturday. On the way to the cage, shadowed by 3 floor supervisors, I noticed an empty blackjack table. I walked over and asked one of the supervisors if I could bet it all in one hand. The table had a $5,000 limit. I was dealt 2 aces. I had no money to split them. After 2 hits, we ended up pushing on a 17, and I avoided what would have been the most stupid, embarrassing thing I have ever done. Story 26. I was in band in high school. I had a friend from middle school who was also involved in athletics. The 2 of us were outcasts among the other band nerds and were often talked down to. Even our instructor sometimes joined in. At the time, flipping backpacks was popular. You took everything out of the backpack, turned it inside out, returned the items, and zipped it back up. One day we had a substitute and he had the class watch that corny Mozart movie from the 1980s. I found a large bag of zip ties and convinced my friend to help me flip every student's backpack. Zip-tied the bags closed, and then zip-tied the bags to the instrument lockers while everyone watched the movie. If we had been caught and reported, the instructor would have suspended us, so we were extra nervous. Just as we were finishing, the substitute locked eyes with us from across the room, realized what was happening, and decided to pretend nothing had happened. We completed the mission on time. The class was very angry when the lights came on and they saw what had happened. The substitute returned later that year and told us he had to actively try not to lose his temper when he saw what was happening. I fucking love you, Mr. Hudson. Story 27. Once I got into a fit of road rage. A driver cut me off on the interstate, so I honked at him. It was a longer honk, a few seconds. He slowed down and matched the speed of the car in the right lane, blocking me. I flashed my headlights and honked again. He leaned out of his sunroof and spat, and the spit hit my windshield. He then accelerated heavily back to speed. I floored it, moved into the right lane, and tried to pass him. He floored it too. We definitely exceeded 85 miles per hour. The speed limit was 65 miles per hour, if I recall correctly. Coming up quickly on a delivery truck in the right lane while he remained in the left and I was in the right, I accelerated harder. I barely got in ahead of him and cut him off about 50 feet before the delivery truck. I slowed down and matched the delivery truck speed and waited for about a minute at the speed limit. Then I passed the delivery truck and moved right. He had been tailgating me and partly driving on the shoulder. The other driver accelerated and flew past. I returned to 5 miles per hour over the speed limit. Lots of risk and zero reward. I was a complete idiot. There was nothing to gain. I saved no time and endangered at least 3 lives, including my own, the other drivers, and the delivery drivers. Story 28. Sorry, I can't help edit text that describes sexual activity involving a minor. I can help in other ways, for example, edit the text if you remove or generalize the sexual details so it no longer refers to a minor. Edit the text if you confirm the person was 18 or older. Rewrite the post to focus on the health issue without sexual details. Give tips for preparing text for Azure Text-to-Speech. Tell me which option you prefer. Story 29. During an all-nighter study session with my college roommate, we decided to get some McDonald's. It was around 1 in the morning, so we left all our belongings in a common study room, including our laptops, and got in my car. It was pitch black, very foggy even with my lights on, and it was raining. I could not see more than a foot in front of the car, so we were driving 10 miles per hour down the highway with no sleep. After less than 5 terrifying minutes, We decided the cheeseburgers were not worth it and went home. It was high risk and offered no reward. Story 30. Slept in a tent at an abandoned asbestos mine. I could see asbestos on the ground. The morning view was nice. Most asbestos-related illnesses do not appear for about 30 years. I did not check the exact time frame. I do not know if I am safe or if I will develop lung damage. Story 31. Freshman year of high school. I went to Spanish class and the door was closed. So I waited outside for the teacher to return from her lunch break. Took her a while and several classmates were waiting too. I was friends with a couple of people in that class and thought it would be funny to try to open the lock with a bobby pin, so I stuck the bobby pin in the lock many times. We giggled. A few minutes later, the teacher arrived and tried to unlock the door, but it wouldn't open. She said, that's weird. It was fine this morning. This high school was strict and had cameras everywhere. So I was freaking out internally, thinking, oh my God. The teacher sent me, of all people, to the office to ask someone to open the door. Those were the worst few minutes of my life. I prayed my friends hadn't said anything and tried to stay calm. Story 32. I ate an innocent piece of lettuce in Bolivia. I ended up in the hospital, and I think I still have all my organs. Story 33. While in basic training in the Army in 2004, I took a piece of cherry pie during dinner chow, covered it with 2 slices of bread, and ate it before touching my actual dinner. One of the guys in my platoon saw me but never said anything. If the drill sergeants had caught me, they would have made me and my platoon pay with a set of 200 exercises, including push-ups, sit-ups, and burpees, and probably mountain climbers until a few of us threw up. It was the first thing I had eaten with sugar in 2.5 months, and it was delicious, especially since I never got caught. Story 34. My friends and I, at a boarding school, thought it would be a fun prank to remove the wheels from our principal's car and then leave a treasure map with riddles for each wheel. Later in class, he announced over the loudspeakers, "To those who stole my wheels, you have 15 minutes to return them and put them back on my car, or you will be expelled from the school." We put the wheels back on and told everyone about it. A week later, no one even remembered that we had almost been expelled. Story 35. I was stationed at Guantanamo Bay Naval Base. I worked exterior security, not inside the facility, and it's actually a pretty laid-back place to work. Anyway, there were several beaches where we could swim, and a few of us thought it would be fun to swim down along the fences and take some pictures on the Cuba side. Turned out they really didn't like that. They did not approach us, but an announcement warned that doing so was highly illegal. They closed the adjoining beaches and demanded that anyone involved come forward. We never did, and they never figured it out. We basically risked an international incident for a couple of pictures. It was the stupidest thing I've ever done. Story 36. I sent my boss a glitter bomb and never revealed who sent it. The whole organization, thousands of people, knew it happened. My boss flipped out when glitter went everywhere. A little background. No one liked this boss. I accidentally walked into my boss's office a second after it had been opened. There was glitter everywhere, on them a huge pile on their desk, and scattered across the computer, keyboard, their hair, and the carpet. They were furious, and I had to stand there and watch the nuclear meltdown. They tried everything to find out who did it. The company would not disclose the sender, and everyone was questioned. In the end, people returned to work, and the boss looked bad for overreacting and trying to rally higher-ups to find me. I was terrified I would be found out and punished. I had previously been fired from my position by this person for communicating a work stoppage. This happened a long time ago. I no longer work for the organization, and the boss is no longer with the company. In a strange twist, she was removed from her position. Story 37. One time in 5th or 6th grade, my friend and I decided to steal the little rubber separators between the metal keys of our school's xylophones. We took them all to use as little army men. The next day, we were called to the music teacher's office and told how much damage we had done. I don't really remember what happened after that, but I think we returned our army men. Not long after, we got in trouble for bringing our Yu-Gi-Oh cards to school in Crown Royal pouches. Story 38. I wasted over 2,000 hours playing a competitive multiplayer game. In the end, I gained nothing except I strained, mental fatigue, and emotional distress. Story 39. I stole a random season of Seinfeld digital video discs from Walmart by hiding them under my hoodie. An alarm went off as I left, but it was 1 in the morning, so no one did anything. I just kept walking. Story 40. I took an ex to my high school prom because we were friends. I paid for the ride, the dinner, and the tickets because it was my prom. They were a year junior to me. At the event, they ignored me, refused to dance or talk to me, and told me point blank they would not. They also told their friend group, who were the dates my other friends had invited, to ostracize me when we arrive. So much for being friends. They had been planning this fuck you for a while. Background. I broke up with them because they cheated on me, and they felt betrayed. I was floored, so I danced with a Colombian friend who was a fantastic dancer, and we had a great time. I found my ex in the hallway crying because they were embarrassed that I had abandoned my date and danced with a woman they had called a derogatory name. They refused to acknowledge their own hypocrisy and cruelty. I thought we were good before that night. I never talked to them again. Story 41. When I was young, I spent $100 on my mother's credit card to buy a game. I deleted everything related to the purchase, but I was eventually caught. I regret spending so much on stupid games. Story 42. In primary school, I took a whodunit forensics course for 1 semester. At the end of the course, after we had solved the crime, we held a trial to present our evidence and convict the murderer. I played the murderer. I missed half the trial because I thought escaping and going on the run was in character and the door was right there. The police had to bring me back at least twice. Luckily, the teacher had a sense of humor and went along with it rather than declaring me a disruption to the class. Story 43. I smuggled 250,000 euros of drug money, taped to my chest through 4 countries for the princely sum of £3,000. I risked my freedom for a sofa, a nice sofa, but still, 2 out of 10. Would not do it again. Story 44. He was an abusive boyfriend who had run-ins with the police. I ended up breaking up with him afterward and spent a day in jail. I was very lucky. Harboring a fugitive is a felony. I risked having a permanent felony on my record for a man without a job who regularly verbally abused me. It was the stupidest thing I have ever done because I thought I loved him and wanted to be with him forever. Story 45. I walked into my house as a confident 15-year-old with a cigarette in my mouth, telling my dad that things were going to change around here. Wow, I did not expect this. I feel I must clarify for everyone involved. This was a skit from a Lee Evans concert I had just watched with a friend. Thinking it was a good idea, I do not know why, I decided to do it to my dad, a merchant seaman with many years of experience. He was basically a hard man. You either liked him or you did not. There was no middle ground with him. I did not take into account that he had not seen this particular concert and, for all intents and purposes, he did not do funny. The hit I took that day forever changed me as a man. It is the best I have had yet. So yes, things changed. I never tried anything that foolhardy again. I still get ringing in my right ear, and I never told my mom because I feared her more. Thank you all for the replies and rewards. I truly did not expect this. Stay safe, everyone. Fixed. Jesus, it was autocorrect. Relax, Dictionary Divas. Story 46. I go to my job every day, working in close proximity to dozens of people during a pandemic for less than $500 per week. It is sad and oddly comforting to see how many people are in the same situation. It is frightening to feel that I am not only playing Russian roulette with my life but also with the lives of family members who can stay home. In my case, that would be my wife. Thank you to the kind strangers who gave me my first Reddit awards. Story 47. One day, I locked myself out of my apartment. I had to pay around 70 euros last time, so I decided to climb the building facade to my window on the 2nd floor. Yes, I could have broken a limb or my neck for the price of a AAA game. Story 48. I was a male prostitute for 2 years. I never used protection because I did not have the confidence to insist on it. I sent all the money to a woman in another country who was cheating on me. I know for a fact that some clients had human immunodeficiency virus, but I preferred to take the 1 in 100 chance of transmission rather than ask for a condom. I ended up contracting hepatitis C and chlamydia. Antibiotics cured the chlamydia. My immune system cleared the hepatitis C, which can happen on rare occasions when people's bodies eliminate the virus on their own. Story 49. Back in 2000 or 2001, right after my mom passed away, my brother and I moved in with my father and his family in a new house. Not even a month after we moved in, our house burned down. They said it was an electrical fire. I pulled my father's wife's granddaughter out of the house, and I never received so much as a thank you from my father's wife, the girl's mother, or anyone else in that family. I have no doubt that if I had not pulled the child out of the house, she probably would not have survived. I was 13 or 14, and it's safe to say I was dealing with a lot. Story 50. I was hit by a car and broke 2 bones in my wrist. I was on my bike, and the driver who hit me was inexperienced. I did not want to ruin her driving record or cause her insurance rates to increase over a small mistake. I did not know the extent of the injury at first, and I did not want to make things worse for her. The impact seemed minor. I essentially fell sideways onto my wrist. If my bike had been damaged, I probably would have pursued her, because it was my main way to get to school and everywhere. Some people have criticized me. I was very distracted and not focused on her. I also had, and still have, a girlfriend who is more attractive. I was hit on Friday, September 13th. That night, there was a full moon. Story 51. Second time I ever had sex. Imagine the damn, bitch, you live like this meme, but worse. I could not see the carpet for empty soda cans and yogurt cups. There was an engine block on her kitchen table. She told me she was an out-of-work nurse and her proof was a tattoo of the caduceus. She said there was no need for a condom because she was already pregnant. Story 52. I moved across the country from California to Massachusetts because I saw my high school crush on a dating site. It turned out she would not date bald men under any circumstances. After I moved to Massachusetts, I created a profile on the dating site and sent her a brief message. She changed her profile to express disinterest in bald men. So I did not contact her again and she never knew who I was. Story 53. About 15, I was riding in the back of a car driven by my sister with some friends. I decided to impress everyone by doing a Chinese fire drill. A Chinese fire drill is when everyone gets out of the car at a red light and runs a lap around it. You may return to your original seat or someone else's, but if your seat is taken you must run another lap. Stupidly, I forgot that my parents were going to the same place and did not look to make sure the coast was clear. It was not. My parents were in the car directly behind us. I was the only one who actually did the Chinese fire drill. Everyone else thought I was joking. Story 54. While camping alone in North Queensland, Australia, I set up my camera and tripod on the viewing platform of a lookout overlooking a waterfall and tropical rainforest. Wanting a dramatic Instagram-style shot and wearing flip-flops, I set the camera's 10-second timer, jumped over the safety barrier, sprinted over extremely rocky terrain, stopped myself from running, and quickly sat on the edge of an instant death cliff face. I waited a few seconds for the camera to click. After reaching relative safety, having stupidly risked my life, I stepped off a rock on my way to view the photo and twisted my ankle. Being alone, I packed up my camera gear in excruciating pain as my ankle swelled like a balloon. I channeled Bear Grylls, turned my tripod into a walking stick, and limped and hopped back down the trail for about an hour until I returned to my campsite, where I began treating my throbbing ankle. While icing my elevated ankle, I checked the photo I expected to treasure, only to realize I was wearing a green and brown t-shirt that blended into the background, so I could not even be seen in the shot. I will try to find the photo. Story 55. I stayed up for 3 days when I was 18 to finish schoolwork I had forgotten. I drove to school all 3 days, which was risky. On the third day, it was especially bad. I almost drove into a tree at 100 kilometers per hour. The reward for not dying was that I got to attend class, which was awful. Story 56. For more than 10 years, I did illegal graffiti. It was foolish. It has been the only constant in my life for a decade. I am an expert in a foolish hobby. I was arrested and beaten multiple times. I went against the status quo of earning my stripes and accepting disrespect from the older generation. This made far more enemies than friends. There are several people I do not want to run into because of disagreements from 5 to 10 years ago. I went to rehab twice. A reward was posted for me that was almost 20 times the minimum wage in that country. I gave up on art school and barely made it through the second time because it felt like selling out and I only cared about graffiti. I am not even a hardcore graffiti writer. I am mediocre at best. I stayed a purist and did not transition to legal work. Legal graffiti is a contradiction and is looked down upon by illegal artists. I made it into my late 20s and I am not a failure. I came out better than most of the people I painted with over the years. I now work in a completely different field with mediocre qualifications. Now I am considered an expert or veteran, but the only people who look up to me are 16-year-olds. It is not worth it, although it does get attention from women. Story 57. I went sliding down rapids with my friends once. I do not know how to swim. It was a few years ago. For guys, we're on a road trip in northern Ontario. We took our canoes and found a set of rapids called the Five Finger Rapids. It was basically 5 different streams ending in a pool. We decided it would be fun to jump in and end up in the pool because someone had told us that people do that at these rapids. I had a life jacket on, and one of my friends was an experienced swimmer. He said he was 1 level away from a lifeguard certificate. Looking back, it was still extremely dangerous. We went down crashing streams of water into a pool bordered by massive rocks. I could have crashed and broken my skull, but it was still a good memory. For your information, everyone survived. Story 58. For the law school admission test, the standardized test for law school in the United States, there was always an experimental section that did not count toward the score. While taking the test, I guessed a certain section was experimental and fooled around during that section. I still received a respectable score, went to law school, and am now drowning in debt. Story 59. I have talked about this before, but Halloween costumes were banned at my high school because some people about 10 years earlier had dressed up and used it as an excuse to hide their faces while they vandalized the school. In my senior year, more than half the class decided we would still dress up and march into the school together in the morning. We all knew we would be punished immediately, but it did not matter. I stayed up all night making a suit of armor out of metallic duct tape and cardboard, along with a broomstick horse to ride. The next day, we all gathered in the parking lot and waited for everyone to show up. People went all out. There were a lot of amazing costumes. After about 20 minutes of waiting, we started our march in. The deans had learned of our plan and were waiting for us as we entered. They began pulling students aside in groups and taking their identification cards to issue Saturday detentions. We only got to be in costume for about 30 minutes before they made us change and gave us detentions. A few people who wore costumes that could not be changed out of, like my friend Dave, who dressed as a Ghostbuster and had nothing under his jumpsuit, received in-school suspension for the day in addition to the detentions. Story 60. One of the items my pledge class had to get before initiation week was 32 identical chairs. 1 for each of us. Being broke college students, we drove around looking for chairs. We ended up at a church and told the people there that Father Mike had said we could borrow them. I still feel awful about it, but if that is the worst thing I have done in my life, I guess I am okay. Story 61. To set the scene, my dramatic 4-year-old self was having none of my mum telling me no. Naturally, because I was being bratty, my mum sent me to my room. I marched up the stairs and slammed the door. Hearing no reaction, I opened it and slammed it again. On my 3rd attempt, the door flew open and I was face to face with my fuming mother. She walked into the room, and I backed away at the same pace, not breaking eye contact. Suffice to say, I lost my bedroom door for a week and never slammed a door again. Story 62. Ran out into the middle of the street, in front of an oncoming bus, to get a quarter that was on the ground. Got the quarter. Story 63. I retrieved a flat football from an island in the middle of a lake when I was a kid. The lake was neck deep, filled with weeds and branches. Took forever to get across and it stank. My best friend's older brother took the ball from me and kicked it right back into the lake. I still have not forgiven that prick. Story 64. I put tape under every mouse in the school during the 30-minute break. I was nearly caught for about 1 minute. It was not very rewarding. Story 65. Uber driving. You stay on the road for hours. Every time you are on the move, there is a risk of being involved in an accident, especially because some drivers behave as if they are in a Fast and Furious movie. You may pick up disruptive or intoxicated passengers who vomit in your car. If you accept a pool ride, your car becomes a bus and you must pick up several people who sit together. There is a significant risk they will fight or that one of them could be a mugger. You can pick up problematic people, including potentially sick passengers who might infect you. Some people will order an Uber during a medical emergency instead of calling an ambulance to save money, and you could be held responsible if they suffer or die in your vehicle. Minors sometimes order rides when they are not allowed to, which wastes your time because you are not supposed to pick them up. If you do and an accident occurs and a minor is injured or killed, you are responsible. Beyond life-threatening risks, you alone must handle maintenance and fuel. You may drive more than 100 miles a day to make money. Your car depreciates the more you drive. Parts wear out. Tires need frequent replacement because they lose grip from heavy use. And you will encounter mechanical problems you did not know existed. Sitting and driving all day will also hurt your spine. It can feel like a knife stuck in the bone and stop you in your tracks when you try to walk. And you do all of this for 60 cents per mile driving passengers around. Story 66. One day I was walking home from my friend's house. It was about a 5-minute walk. As I walked, a couple was in front of me. A woman and her boyfriend. The man was shouting abuse at her, treating her like a dog and being aggressive. She did not seem well. I live above a shop. The man went into the shop while the woman waited on a low wall nearby. I went over to her quickly and asked if she was okay and needed help. I offered to call the police and told her I would protect her if necessary. She said she was okay and thanked me. I told her to contact the police if she needed to. No one deserves to be treated like that, and I resigned myself to knowing I had done what I could. The boyfriend came out of the shop. I walked toward it but did not go home yet because I did not want him to know where I lived. He walked over to her and they crossed the road. During that time, she must have told him what I had said. The man walked back toward me, shouting and telling me to mind my own business. He was a large man and I am a 5'3" woman. I would not be spoken to like that, so I stood my ground and told him that if he harmed her I knew what he looked like. He continued to curse at me, even though I had taken a risk and she had put me in danger by telling him what I said, and even though I was scared, I still felt sorry for her. They appeared to be substance users, and I wished she had accepted my help and left him, despite having put me at risk. Story 67. In my old job, I worked 10 to 12 hours a day, often until midnight, to meet the quota. I would go home only to sleep and shower. I had no time for myself, my family, or a social life. The environment was toxic, which harmed my health, and I earned very little. That was almost 2 years ago. Now I have a more stable job and also earn income online doing freelance writing and similar work. Postscript. Never settle for less. Know your value. You are worth more than you think. Story 68. I stole every pair of scissors I could find in my high school over the course of 2 years. It started as a joke about how my French teacher kept forgetting things, so each week I asked if I could take a pair because I didn't have any, and she always said okay. I cleaned out the French class, then moved on to history and English until every class no longer had scissors. That was around 50 pairs. They were replaced and I cleaned those out too. This continued until I had about 200 pairs, and my parents couldn't ignore my ever-growing pile of scissors when they caught me. My high school never found out. Story 69. I am a nurse on a coronavirus disease 2019 unit. I leave my small children and work 12-hour shifts to be cursed at, swung at, spat on, and called names while my patients desaturate and decline rapidly from the disease. Nursing was a thankless job before this pandemic, but with the risk of infecting myself or my children and the obvious post-traumatic stress disorder from all the death, I am seriously considering changing careers. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.